It's episode 21, and today on the podcast we've got Joe Appleyard in the studio, who is the Hull KR reporter for Hull Live. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
No, anytime. Really enjoyed listening to the podcast, so it's great to be a guest.
Thank you. Firstly, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, Hull Live reporter. It's been a bit of a hectic journey since I was 18, so played rugby all my life, started at East Hull, so I'm an East Hull lad. Signed for Hull KR Academy when I was 13, played there for 3 years, was captain, had a really successful team, and there's still a few lads playing Super League now. Moved up to the academy level, so the under-18s. First season, did okay, had a bit of a knee injury, and then you probably won't know this, the Hull FC and Hull KR, I'm sure we'll get into this rivalry soon, the two academy merged. And it was such a big talking point. We found out at training, and the reason being was there was no talent in Hull. And Hull finished third that year, and we finished fourth out of 14 teams. So it was a bit like it didn't really make sense. So I kind of wanted a way out. I wanted to play for Rovers, not City of Hull. Went to Australia. My knee and my ankle, I wasn't recovering right. And then went to Australia, played for a team called Mackay, which is just north of Brisbane. Again, did a few games but just couldn't get back into it, was suffering with my ankle, came back, ended up getting released from Rovers as well because I was on a bit of a dual contract, and then went to do a degree in teaching, still playing part-time rugby, and then that was when the love of like podcasts and writing started. I started getting into journalism, doing commentary for Hull KR, and it just went from there really, and I've managed to get this gig in 2022 April, and it's been a hectic ride. Been great to see the rise of Hull Kingston Rovers. I've been a fan, played for them, and now report on them. So I think I've been affiliated with Hull KR for 26 years, and it's exciting times for the club at the moment. But yeah, I always dreamed of being a rugby league player, and of course when you're from Hull, if you're from the east side, you want to pull on the red and white. If you're from the west, you want to pull on the black and white. But growing up, never thought I'd be 26 and being able to work for the club technically and being able to report on them on a weekly basis. I say I dreamed about being a rugby player. This is probably the second best thing. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. There's loads more, but I don't want to bore people, and that's probably me in a nutshell.
I feel like I can speak for both of us because we don't really know too much about rugby. And I think as well as out of towners coming to Hull. Can you explain the difference between rugby union and rugby league?
I'd say rugby league's a lot better for a start. Playing's biggest difference, obviously, rugby league has 13 players on the pitch with 4 substitutes. Rugby union has 15 with about 8, and they're rolling subs as well on rugby league. So if you come off, you can come back on. Very different in the fact rugby league's such a northern-based sport. It's on this M62 corridor. You look at Super League, barring Catalan Dragons, who are based in Perpignan in France. It's all just northern teams in the northwest. St Helens, Widnes, obviously there was a big team from where you guys are from. They're in the Championship now, so it has been a big M62 corridor sport for so long, and rugby union's got the more money in it. It's a bit like cricket. A lot of your private school boys end up being a rugby union player, whereas the lads who play for Hull KR and Hull FC, barring the Australians who come over, they're all just working class lads who have come up the ranks, playing in Leeds, playing in Bradford, Hull, and that's the main difference. There's a big north-south divide, and I think to sum it up as well, rugby union's so much bigger on the international stage. You go watch England and Scotland at Twickenham in the Six Nations, you'll get 90,000 people there. England and Scotland playing in rugby league, you won't be able to fill Rovers' ground, which has 16,000, you'd get about 5. So it's a shame. We always say it whenever we're talking about this sport, we know the product's so good. When it went to like a Super League in 1997, and the aim was it was going to become bigger than cricket, bigger than rugby union. You had teams like Paris Saint-Germain in it. You had big names come in, and ultimately every year teams just kind of dwindled out, and the money went elsewhere. The money went to rugby union, and unfortunately at the moment rugby league's in a bit of a transition state. It's got great on the pitch, but they've been took over by a company called IMG who work with the Darts of the world, so your Eddie Hearns, these big companies, because they want to try and get it out there. It's now on Channel 4 and Premier Sports, so it's getting a wider audience. In the 70s, 80s, rugby league was the big sport in England, barring football, of course, whereas now it is by the wayside. But you come to any of these northern cities and try and debate that rugby union's better, then you'd be shunned out in 5 seconds, probably.
Well, the Hull FC and Hull KR, I was under the impression, and I don't think I'm wrong, that they would. One was rugby league, one was rugby union. That's not the case.
No, both rugby league. So both playing Super League. So both in the top tier. Ironically, Hull KR started on the west side of the city, and Hull FC started in the east side. This was in the 1900s, and now obviously Rovers is East Hull and Hull FC is west. But no, both in the top flight of rugby league.
What kind of precipitated that move to the opposite sides of the city?
I think it was
what's
just
the
money.
rivalry about?
Well, the rivalry is just, you'll know, being from Liverpool, Everton. It's just in the same city. There's no other place in England that has two rugby league, teams, and it's mad. It's mad. I'd recommend you to go to a derby. Both derbies have been this year, and at the moment, Hull FC probably won't make the playoffs, and Rovers are in a strong position too, so they won't meet again. But there's nothing like it. It splits families. It's a bit of a cliche, but I've got friends and on my wife's side of the family who are all FC fans. I'll go out my way not to speak to them for 3 weeks before the derby and 3 weeks after, or if they've won, I'll be on the blower to them 5 minutes later. But they're the best things in the world and the worst things in the world, and I think as much as the two teams hate each other, they both love having each other next to each other. There wouldn't be Hull KR wouldn't be this complete Hull KR without having Hull FC next to them, and I'd argue FC are probably the same, but it's been a rivalry for, God knows, 120, 30 years now. It's been going strong. They've had some cracking games over the years. Probably for a city as big as Hull, both teams haven't, in recent years anyhow, are nowhere near where they should be. When you compare to the teams who have been successful, like a St Helens, for example, who are a tiny town in the northwest, and then we've got Hull, this big city. But then it can cause problems because you've got a small batch of players coming up the ranks, and half want to go Hull, half want to go Rovers, so you don't get a full cohort of players coming through the system, and that's a knock-on effect with recruitment. But from a rivalry point of view, I've never seen anything like it. Like I said, I've been to some big football matches in my times, big rivalries, but the atmosphere you can generate, especially at Hull City, I was going to be cocky and say Hull City's ground there because they own it, but Hull FC's ground, the MKM Stadium, the atmosphere there is honestly, untouchable sometimes, and I think it's great for the sport, especially to have Hull and Rovers, because supporters-wise, they are the two best supported teams away from home as well. When we're recording this, Rovers will go to Wigan tomorrow night, a week before they're in a major final. They'll take 1,000 fans to Wigan on a Friday night, takes them 3.5 hours to get there. Hull will do the same. And for a team that's had pretty little success in recent years, they both travel really well, and they're both adored in this city. Sometimes hated if they're playing rubbish, which has been the case for so many years, unfortunately, though.
So, in Merseyside, the Merseyside derby, as it's called, between Liverpool and Everton, it's called the friendly derby. What's the character of the Hull KR Hull FC rivalry? Is it amicable, or is it like you said, you just despise them for forever, or you despise them for 3 weeks? What is the atmosphere hostile? I when I think of hostile atmospheres, I think of the Old Firm derby. I think of Fenerbahce and the other team in Turkey. Is it like
Galatasaray. Yeah, there's small sections and it's very well policed. I'm not saying it's like Millwall West Ham where they're running through the streets of East Hull before game days lobbing bricks at each other. It's nothing like that. It is amicable. The banter sometimes gets a little bit frosty. Social media is a terrible place to be, especially in my role. I get to see it all. But it is hatred. The players hate each other. The fans hate each other. And I always think as well, they're the architects of their own downfall, because for so many years, Rovers fans, if Rovers get beat and Hull get beat, it's all right, well, FC got beat as well. And FC will win. What did Rovers do? Whereas if they just concentrated on their own, but it's so hard when you're in that bubble. You'll know it being Liverpool, Everton, and it can get hostile. There's not very rarely that it goes overboard and there's police have to get involved in that, but there is small sections of it, but it's well managed, and it's obviously with the supporters as well. You get 24 when it's at MKM, 24,000, and then at Rovers you'll get about 11. So it's not the case of where you're at Celtic Rangers where there's 40, 50,000 there and the police have to manage all that, because it's a bit more, there is some instances, I'd be lying if they said they want, and obviously it's there for all to see, but it's the majority are, it's banter, there is that hatred, but it'd never cross that line where it gets violent.
Why do you support Hull KR? Is it back like family tradition and that east-west divide?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I grew up on Sutton Trust, which is literally a 5-minute walk from Craven Park. And there is an instance, some of my friends who grew up around me, they came from Hull FC. But when I was growing up, so my generation, Rovers were in the 2nd division, were fighting administration, probably weren't going to be a club. Hull FC had won the Challenge Cup, that was in the new Super League. Rovers wasn't in the Super League, so There was in a division with like Featherstones of the world, Swinton, Oldham, where he was getting 1,000-2,000 fans. And, you know, my granddad's been a supporter for 80 years, still going strong now, and so is my whole family. And it's just that generation, you just get brought down. And again, being from East Hull and living a few minutes away from the ground, coming from a family of red and whites, it was never ever going to be any different. And that's probably the case for people who grew up a minute from the Boulevard FC's old stadium. But there is some cases where people on the east side support the west side, but that's probably around my age, because at the time when we was growing up. A bit like why a lot of lads my age support Liverpool or Man U's, because there was the informed team. They didn't want to go to watch Rovers on a Sunday in front of 1,000 fans playing pretty probably, poor rugby. It was Hull were the big team. They'd moved into this brand new stadium. They had the Australians. Rovers were just this little team that was going by the wayside. Skip that to 15, 20 years ago now, and they've done really well to get back to where they are.
What's the genesis of the success?
It depends what you deem as success, really, because at the minute they haven't won a major trophy since 1986, which really, hopefully that'll change next week. But it's what they've done. I remember being at the club when I was at the club, and obviously won't reveal home truths, but in-house, so much needed cleaning, so much needed sorting out. Now they've got a new coach. They're probably the richest club now. They've got Sewell's, so Dr. Paul Sewell, he's the new owner, all the garages around Hull and stuff, so he's the new owner.
Oh, I see what that is. Yeah.
So they get the BP, the green and white garages around Hull.
Is that a whole thing?
Yeah, yeah, he's from Hull, Paul. Really successful businessman.
Yeah.
And he's gone out. He's in what was the list? It was in the top 100 list. I think it was the Daily Mirror in London, the businesses, and to get in that, you have to be a very successful. Yeah. So he's Rovers' chairman now. The owner is Neil Hudgell, who again is a very wealthy solicitor from the city. He was a ball boy when he was growing up.
I've seen Hudgell.
Yeah, so Hudgell solicitor.
So it's all coming together now.
Yeah. So Neil started off as a ball boy in the 70s, growing up. When Rovers were in administration, he started sponsoring the shirts. My mum used to work with him when he was a very small businessman and he was just growing up in the world, and now he's owned Rovers for 16, 17 years. And
so she thought of him.
So he knows. Yeah, literally is. Yeah. So they're involved now. They've got a bloke called James McNichol, who is a billionaire from East Hull. His dad used to own Rovers. Lives in London now and lives in America, going from place to place. He's put money in. They're developing the stadium. They're getting their in-house right, and then they're going to try and build around that. And a new coach, this is the first season under Willie Peters in this new era for Hull Kingston Rovers, and they've managed to get to a major final. So at the minute they've won nothing, and it's a very long way to go, but I'd say they're ahead of schedule. And hopefully in this new IMG era where this company were taking over, they want to see what can Hull KR, what can Hull FC, what can Leeds Rhinos, what can they do to get people watching on telly going, do you know what, it's not bad, this rugby league, like what Rovers are doing on and off the field at the moment, probably leaps and bounds above anybody else in the Super League. I am quite biased on that, but if they can get it right on the field, then it could be a long-term success. But of course, fans just want trophies, and so do I as the reporter and as a supporter as well. But ultimately, the bigger picture is they're getting everything right around, and that'll come from that.
That's nice to hear. Yeah, that is. That's the most important thing, I think, in any sporting team. You need to build the foundation. The Liverpool fans had this saying: Shankly built the foundations, Paisley built the house, Benitez did the garden. You've got to build the foundations.
Yeah, you have.
Otherwise it isn't gonna work.
You have
basically
even like that academy. Then, like when I mentioned to Maeve then about like the academies merging, it was just a case of, you don't want us. You don't want us to play for Rovers, or we lost our identity. And then typical, I left, and then 5 months later they went, oh no, it's not working, we'll bring back Rovers and all. And I was like, I ain't got a job anymore, I'm going to have to do something else with my life. They don't want me anymore. But they've got a really good academy. 4 lads are making the debut tomorrow, which is a great achievement. They're getting things right now. And you only have to look back. Since 2007, there was in the Championship in 2006, got promoted. They actually got relegated in 2016. And it's not a case of you get relegated in football, you get a £60 million parachute payment. Rovers have gone from playing Leeds Rhinos and Hull FC to playing Oldham again and having these big people on wages to go and play plumbers on a Sunday afternoon. Luckily, they came up at the first time of asking, and I think that was the best thing that ever happened to them. Cleared the dead wood, staff, coaches, there's no sugarcoating it. There was a lot of it, and you could see it, whereas now everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet, and it's a long process, but it's really positive, and it's great for the city as well. I know obviously we're on to talk about the city as well. It's healthy to have 2 clubs being in that top flight and hopefully bring success.
On that, right.
If you're going to ask me, do I want Hull to be successful as well? Is that the way you're going?
Yeah.
I knew I could see it. Plain and simple, no.
Yeah.
No, there's no, even in this job, I don't have to lie and pretend that I'm a Hull FC fan and I want both teams to do well. I've grown up as a Rovers supporter, and Dan, my colleague who's the Hull FC reporter, he's a die-hard black and white. He don't want Rovers to win. We're friends, and then we sit next to each other when the derby's on, and I'll shake his hand if they're winning, he'll shake mine. But ultimately, no. I want Hull to be in Super League because it's great to have that Rovers and Hull rivalry, but no, successful's different. I want Rovers to be at the top and Hull can just play the part and play 27 games a season.
The Everton then, yeah. How does that success translate into success for the city?
Well, it'll get more people involved, and it's that grassroots, isn't it? Like you just mentioned then, if people are seeing Rovers play at Wembley next week, they'll go, I want to play for Rovers, I want to be able to get there. And rugby league, the amateur game, has just suffered so much since COVID. I read a book the other week on the old rugby league in Hull, and I think in 1980 there was, when Rovers and Hull played each other in a major final, ironically, there was about 60 amateur clubs in Hull. I think there's about 9 now. Yeah. There's a Hull League, a few of my friends still play in the Hull League. You've got like your East Hull, your West Hull, Skeller, so the village out, they've still got a good team, but barring that, again, you've got rugby union teams who are taking over, who are paying money. Hull IUFC, Hull Ionians, they're about 3 divisions from the first division. You get paid like £200 a game, whereas my friend plays for Skeller. He'll travel to Cumbria on a Saturday afternoon. No money, get involved, just to laugh and stuff, but there's no incentive. Whereas hopefully there'll be no money in the amateur game. I'm not promising that, but I just think if your Rovers and your Hulls, if they can start building stuff and getting better, people will want to start pulling on that jersey again. A bit like Hull City as well, what they've been going through for years. People didn't want to be involved in City because it was a toxic place to be, whereas now they seem to be getting better. And it's a long process. It wasn't built in a day, and I think it is going to be a 10-15 year overhaul. But I think for the city itself, we want to be proud of our rugby clubs, our footy clubs. Sport's massive, and the culture's great, and everything they've done in this city. But ultimately, the people who've been here the longest are the rugby and football teams, and that's what a lot of people, like you mentioned on an earlier podcast that I listened to. You remember Hull from Hull City. We want people to go, oh yeah, Hull KR, Hull FC. That's how it gets, doesn't it? That's how you make the city great, in my opinion. Yeah,
I'm obliged to agree with you on that. Maeve might not, because you're not a big sporting fan, are you? But
I am. Like I wouldn't say I don't follow football daily, or I don't even know what Coventry when the first game is.
She turns into a great Everton fan when Liverpool are playing. She goes, "I Liverpool getting beat." Yeah.
Well, the last World Cup, the one before that in England and Scotland played at the Ricoh Arena in Coventry. Because they tried to. So there's a Midlands team near you that are Birmingham, Coventry. A few of my friends play for them now. They train a few nights a week. They're in League One, so 2 divisions below. But so there is teams like that, Cornwall. So they're getting away from just that M62 corridor, but there's not much money in it. They're all just part-time players. But so if you're when you're at home, go watch Midlands play. If you get into rugby league, of course, support Rovers. But if you want a local team, Midlands is yours.
Tell us a little about your role. So, like, what do you do essentially? Obviously, you're a reporter, but what's the day-to-day?
Yeah, so I think a basic week for me is if they're playing on a Friday, so you speak to players, I host the press conferences, go to the games, home and away, liaise with the CEOs, with the chairmans, work with agents. I've been on the phone with a few Australian agents, because I'm Hull KR's reporter, but I work for Rugby League Live as a company, and we deal with the other teams in Yorkshire as well, but my sole responsibility on a daily basis is Hull KR. But it's just what you'd expect a club reporter to be. I don't work for the club. I think that's a main thing to say. So I do have an opinion, and obviously I'm not just, if they're playing bad, I'm not going to pretend that they're not. So there is that difficulty as well when you're working with players and then you've slagged them off the week before and then you've got to go interview them. I've had a few cases of that. But that just comes with the territory. But so I work with the coach, Willie Peters. Me and him will do a press conference every week. We've got Wigan away, for example, tomorrow. So drive down, run a blog, obviously all match reports, ratings. It's all online now, so it used to be all in the paper, whereas now it's all on the Hull Live website. So it's a very busy job, it's demanding, and you don't get many thanks for it, but at the end of the day, when I get to go and report on them at Wembley and get to go to these great stadiums, travel with the team to France, that's when it pays off. So it's a very busy job, and you're always coming under scrutiny. It's fans, really, and again, coming into that rivalry, everything I put, Hull FC fans want to scrutinise it, whereas everything Dan puts the FC guy, or Rovers fans want to scrutinise it, so you get a lot of stick. You've got to be able to cop a lot of flack, but at the end of the day, a lot of it's funny, and I kind of reap off it sometimes. I like it when, it was a great example the other week, I had a lot of FC fans when they was in the semi-final going, you're going to get hammered by Wigan, and had loads of tweets on my thingy, and then after the game when they'd reached Wembley, I just was like, I thought I could put so much stuff, but then I didn't want to jinx it, and if they get hammered in the final, they'll get the last laugh, won't they? But so it's a really enjoyable job. I'm quite proud of my position that I'm in, and I'm really grateful to be in it. Sometimes I have to pinch myself and go, this is my job. But yeah, so I never thought I'd be in this because obviously I ain't got a journalism degree. I ain't got a degree in anything like that. Mine's in teaching, and I was PE teaching while I was doing all the freelance. So the company took a bit of a punt on me to do it, and I feel like I've shown them why now. But there's not many people who have done it as well, especially from the local area. A lot have come from outside and have come from your Manchesters and Leeds and just done it. So I think there's only 2 from East Hull who have ever done it since the 50s, so I carry that as well because I feel like I'm speaking for the people, really.
Yeah.
So when just on a comedic note, when these people disagree with you, say the fans and the players, you might get up the nose a little bit. How do you deal with that? And then secondly, do you think the lack of a journalism degree or qualification has helped you at all, or held you back?
I'll answer the second one first.
Okay.
No, I don't think so, because I was doing it all off the back of my own anyhow. I don't think you need to have a journalism degree as such. I think it helps, but especially in a sport like rugby league, people just want the truth, and you got to put a lot of examples in. And rugby league, because it's not a popular sport, I'd argue anyone who's just looking to have a club reporter job, it's so hard to do that compared to football, because everyone knows about football, whereas rugby, you come into Hull and you've got to work in this little bubble. That's what it is in Hull in rugby league. It's a bubble. You're surrounded by so many people. I think it didn't really affect me, and when I was looking to get into it, I started publishing match reports. I was working people who have got them degrees, so I kind of was doing it on the side. I got a few minor qualifications, not an actual degree in it, but. And then what was the first question? And the players about when you slag them off and stuff like that.
How do you handle that? Because I follow Liverpool journalists, of course, and there's a notable one called James Pearce, you might be aware of. And Klopp had a bit of.
I was going to say, is he the one who Klopp didn't answer the question?
Yeah. So has that ever happened to you? And in those situations, how do you deal with it, basically?
Well, funny. The old coach Tony Smith, who is now the Hull FC coach, which is funnily enough, last year he got sacked there was on an 11-game losing streak. I was kind of sugarcoating it, trying to help him out because he'd done really well for the club. He built them up. He built the foundations, but it was coming to an end. They'd got beat by the team who got relegated that season, obliterated away.
There's no sugarcoating that.
He'd been told he'd been sacked. I didn't know this at the time, so he comes down into the press conference. There was literally me and 3 others there. The other 3 are French, so it's just me and him speaking. And I just asked him, do you think your job's at risk? And then he laid into me, looking back at the time, I was like, I took it quite personal, and I shouldn't do, but I was new to the job, and I was like, I can't believe he's shouting at me. I was quite, but then I realised the bloke had just lost his job. It was nothing against me at the time, and I think you've just got to take it with a pinch of salt. On Twitter, I don't mind, because it's mainly blokes who have got a Mickey Mouse character as the profile picture. It's not, they don't have real names, and these keyboard warriors, I don't mind. I'll take flack off them unless it gets personal, which, to be honest, it never has. It never has, and then I'd be like a bit. But I can take all that with a pinch of salt, because the next week we'll be singing and they'll be, But players, it's a tough one, because I think sometimes just if you've played poor, I've got to do my job. You're doing your job. I won't be doing my job right if we get beat 30-0 and I'm saying, it was a spirited performance. You've got to tell the truth, because when they do win and when they do reach Wembley, they're the best thing since sliced bread, and you've got to big them up and you've got to ride that wave with them. And then ultimately, when you're coming down, and it does crash and burn, they went on a 5-game losing streak. They'd got a lot of injuries, but the effort wasn't there, and that was what I was going on. But I always back it up, and I speak to the coach a lot. And when he joined, I said the first thing, I said, if you ever disagree with me, tell me and we'll just have a chat. I think communication's key, and I'd never want them to think he's doing it on purpose for clicks or something like that. I try and back up the reasons, and I think if you've got the evidence, then there can't be no arguments.
Yeah. All right.
Hull KR. So I keep saying Hull KR are in the Challenge Cup final. I keep saying the Championship.
Yeah, many things. Hull KR are playing Barcelona next week
in the Champions League.
Championship Cup final. What is the Challenge Cup final?
The Challenge Cup. It's the FA Cup in rugby league.
Right,
it's the FA Cup.
Right.
So it's the oldest trophy. Finals at Wembley. Every team's in it, amateur teams. So your Westall and Skellers, they're starting the first round, and then the League One and Championship teams come in. But ultimately, it's the FA Cup in rugby league.
And what's the FA Cup of
Oh
football?
my word!
It's the... I'm trying to... How can I...
failed as a boyfriend.
I think you have. So it's a knockout. So obviously...
Domestic knockout.
Yeah,
Right,
so
okay.
Rovers are in Super League with
Right.
12 other teams, so you play your league, don't you? But the the Challenge Cup and the FA Cup and everything like that, you can be drawn against anyone,
Yes.
any division, and that it's a knockout tournament. So every game's a cup final, basically,
Right, okay.
and then so Rovers are in the final, which is great.
So how did they get there?
So they beat Batley 50-0, who are in the Championship. Then they beat Salford at home. I can't remember the score now. And then they beat Wigan in Golden Point 2 weeks ago. So they used to play a lot more games than that, and that's come under scrutiny as well, because realistically you only need to win 3 times to reach Wembley. Whereas if you was a Championship club, which they're never going to get to the final without disrespecting them, they have to play 6 times. So there's an argument, like the last time Rovers reached Wembley, they played 5 games, whereas now they've played 3. But yeah, it's just you've got to beat everyone who's in front of you. You can be drawn against anyone. It's the magic of the cup, and it is the oldest competition in rugby league.
Did I hear you say Wembley there?
Are they playing at
They play-
Wembley?
Yeah, next Saturday.
Who are they playing?
Lee. So
Okay.
They're playing Lee.
Lee, a fairy tale
Really?
story. There was Championship last year.
I can't believe it. That's
Yeah,
just a
it's
small
near.
little town.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So Lee beat St Helens and Rovers beat Wigan in the semi. So this is the most anticipated final in years, because if you would have put up £5 on Lee v Hull KR in the Challenge Cup final 6 months ago, you'd both be in Australia now celebrating.
You're thinking, who's Lee?
Yeah, where is Lee?
Lee, it's like near Warrington.
Yeah.
Between St Helens,
Lee
Warrington
Green?
Way.
It's not Lee Green, is it?
No. That's
Lee Green, that sounds like a darts player. Or something, doesn't it?
Lee Green is a train station in St Helens.
Right,
It's a
okay.
little area in St Helens. Lee is spelled Leigh.
Right, okay.
It's between Warrington and St Helens.
It's all on the East Lancs Road.
Basically,
They're all
yeah.
around each other. So Lee have rebranded. So they used to be called the Centurions. They're called the Leopards now. And have a look at the kit when we finish recording this. They've come under a lot of scrutiny. They've got an owner called Derek Beaumont. He's a maverick. He's mad, but he loves his club.
Yeah,
And
there's nothing wrong with that.
He's spent a lot of money, and they're doing great. They're third in Super League. Rovers are 5th. So it's 2 fairy tale stories. It's
Yeah.
great.
I
But yeah,
didn't even know they had a team.
Yeah, Lee. Yeah. So
I didn't even know Widnes had a team until you said.
Widnes Vikings. They were amazing in the 80s. Best team in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't believe no one's ever heard of Widnes.
Yeah, Widnes, and I like Widnes, Spike Ireland. So
I haven't got a clue what that is.
and yeah,
No.
yeah. They all. Have you ever been to Widnes?
Yeah.
So do you know where the industrial estate is? The
Oh,
pylons
you
and
know
that?
what? I wouldn't know my way around.
So it was. I only know it because one of my favourite bands, the Stone Roses, they played a gig on there years
Okay.
ago. There's a film about
Yeah.
it. It's really good.
I know. I also know Widnes is because Carl, what's his name, Robinson, the MK Dons manager.
Yeah,
he's from Widnes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few football players as
There
well.
is like. I
yeah,
think Conor Cody's from Widnes.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's near Liverpool.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
You know Widnes, don't you?
I know it.
Yeah.
I don't know it, but I know where
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, Lee's in and around.
In and around there. It's in that hot pot.
Yeah, Wigan,
let's say.
Saints, Warrington.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
all.
All right, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Right. So, how come Kingston Rovers, so I don't mean to offend you there, are more successful or get into these cup competitions as opposed to St Helens, as opposed to Lee, as opposed to Widnes? What's the... I suppose St Helens really. I think I'm exposing my lack of knowledge here, but St Helens to me, because they're near to where I'm from, they seem to be a very good side.
Yeah, they are.
Why aren't they in the cup final as opposed to...
It's same as any sport. Every team goes through peaks and troughs.
Oh, right, okay,
They've
yeah.
won 3 Super Leagues on the bounce. Sorry, my throat's going a little bit. And yeah, they're just going through a bit of a transition period. They've got a new coach, and it's a salary cap sport, rugby,
Yeah.
so everyone can spend the same. It's not like football where you can get like Man City paying 100 mil for a player and
Yeah.
then Luton paying 3 million. So Rovers and Lee have just recruited well. They've got momentum at the right time. And it's not a strange thing. Realistically, there's only 12 teams going for this.
Yeah.
If you look at the champion, they're not going to get there. Even like your Wakefield, Castlefords, who are in Super League, they're not going to get to the Challenge Cup final this year because they're pretty bang average, to put it lightly. So it's no surprise from our point of view. And it's nice, it's refreshing. I know the neutrals are so excited. The other journos, people in the media world, when Rovers beat Wigan on the Sunday, Lee had already beat Saints on the Saturday, it was like, wow, this is going to be amazing. It's a new, no Wigan and Saints, no Warrington of the past, these usual teams. It's something different, and that's probably, again, that magic of the Challenge Cup.
Yeah.
It can get you to Wembley.
I was going to ask you, is there a magic of the cup?
Yeah, there still is. There still is. like I said, when we finish this, look at Lee's kit, but look at the atmosphere when Brad Schneider gets that drop goal in extra time. It's like playing golden goal on FIFA. So that was what it was. It was drawing
friendships,
16, slamming controls and that. So it was 16-all after 80 minutes, and Rovers got a drop goal 2 minutes into extra time, which was, the scenes are amazing. And that's again, they've done it dramatic to get there, which has made it even more exciting than that.
Okay.
What are people saying about it? Like, who's expected to win? What are sort of the
We
prospects?
haven't got a clue, have we?
You can't call it. So Lee have beaten Rovers twice this year. So they beat them third game of the season in the last play of the game, so they scored on the hooter to go in front, 32-28, I think it finished.
What's that? Who say?
The final full-time whistle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what you mean when they blow it.
Yeah,
okay.
So there's no like added time.
Yeah.
They play 80 minutes. So if there's an injury, then time stops.
Okay.
Whereas in football, obviously it goes over and you get 5 minutes added time.
Well, let's say you don't have that on properly.
If they get injured.
Yeah.
So the hooter had gone. Rovers were 2 points in front. All they had to do was defend one play and Lee go 60 metres and score. We played them a few weeks back. Absolutely in that poor run, got absolutely decimated, but it's anyone's game. Both teams complement each other in the way they play, and I can't call it. Your head and heart obviously say something different. This is the best chance Rovers will get to win a major trophy. There's no doubt about that. If you'd have said you're playing in a Challenge Cup final this year, you wouldn't have said you're playing Lee, and Lee probably wouldn't have thought they was playing LKR. I think the neutrals want Lee, just because this time last year there was a championship team, whereas now they're in the big time. But obviously, anyone from round these parts or on the east side of the city will want Rovers.
Just blatantly gonna say.
Yeah. But I don't. The bookies, I'll have it tight for sure. I think both will be evens. It won't be a game to bet on and win big, I don't think.
Who watches this? Like, is it, like you said, is it just the East Lancs corridor, the M62, or is it people in, I know France is a big rugby country, and Italy, do people in those countries watch this game, or?
So France have Catalan in the Super League and Toulouse are in the Championship. Australia, it's the NRL in Australia. Their players are on £1 million a year.
Oh, really?
It's like the NFL. It's huge. So the National Rugby League, the NRL, a lot of Rovers players have come over from there and stuff this year. That's huge. It's the biggest sport in Australia. They are followed by the paparazzi. They're superstars.
Why is that? Why is that not the case here?
It's just that it's their national sport. I don't know. It's such a shame. Stuart Pearce, who played for England and Man City.
So
he loves rugby league. He's a big Warrington Wolves fan.
Know that.
And he said if the world was obliterated and we came back to life, he said, and we reset, he said he thinks rugby league would be the best sport in the world and the biggest. It's just been mismanaged and it just hasn't had that funding. And every fan is a loyal fan in rugby league. There just isn't loads in this country. Whereas in Australia, they have a thing called State of Origin, which is basically Yorkshire v Lancashire. So New South Wales against Queensland. They get 70,000 people there. It's the biggest event of the year. They have Sky Sports News over there dedicated to rugby league.
That's bizarre.
Every game's on telly. It's worldwide. It's watched over here. So there was a team from Canada. So they are trying to get there in the English Super League. But again, it's just funding. Because you're talking about all these northern towns and cities. They're struggling anyhow. Yeah. You've got to get a businessman to lose money every year because you're not making money. You're not getting big crowds. St Helens and Wigan and Hull FC, they'll get between 14 and 10,000 fans, but then even Rovers, they're only getting 8.5, 9. These teams like Wakefield and Castleford, they're not even breaking even. So you've got to find someone to invest.
Yeah.
And there's no transfer fees, very rarely. It's all at the end of contracts. So people don't buy from other clubs unless it's a superstar they want now. So it's so different the way it's run.
What do you think will happen to Hull KR as a team if they win the final?
Oh, it'll be huge. It'll be huge around the city as well. You'll have to go to the parade, definitely. It'll be worth it. Obviously, we hope that happens. I don't want to get too far ahead. It's needed. If there's a club that deserves it, it's Hull Kingston Rovers, and that's taking my red and white hat off as well. I think it will rejuvenate them. It'll give them a platform to build off now, because I know for a fact, working with Willie Peters and working with the club, yes, they'll be buzzing to win, but the second they win, it'll be celebrating, and then it'll be like, right, we need to concentrate back on the league now. Whereas in times gone by, the last time they got to Wembley, they threw all their eggs in that basket. They did a charity single. They'd already planned the celebrationary parade. They'd already got it planned. They got beat 50-0
to
Leeds, and they've been embarrassed from it ever since. I hate saying 50-0 because I know what people think when I say that. Whereas now, when that was in 2015, when they won the semi-final, it was already just, right, we haven't won anything. You know, but again, it'll be great because investments will come in. There'll be the talk of the city for years to come. It gives them that pedestal above everybody else, and it just gets that hoodoo off the bat because they've won like the little trophies, like to describe to you, Liam, like the Johnson Pate Trophy.
Oh,
you know them
yeah,
one?
yeah.
They've won that when they've been in the Championship. They've won a few of them, but not a major trophy since 1986. They won the division, and then since then they've had a few appearances at Wembley, but nothing compared to what they could achieve under this new era. So it's exciting, but obviously now it's won yet.
And what do you think it will do for Hull as well? Obviously, you've touched on it briefly, but...
Yeah, like I said, I just think it'll be great. I think people start recognising it and taking it serious again, especially in the rugby league world, and it's a knock-on effect because they win a major trophy. There's a big thing in rugby league, recruitment-wise. There's so many good players in Wigan. There's so many good players that side of the Pennines. You find it so hard for them to come and settle over this side of the M62 because they can still live in Wigan and play for Salford in Manchester, which is 30 minutes away. Even Castleford, Wakefield, an hour away. You come and do 2 hours each time on the M62 or you move over here. It's big. It's a big step. Rovers have had it in the past, and I know Hull FC have. They've signed players from Lancashire. They don't live over here. They're training 4 times a week. You know how treacherous the M62 is. Imagine having to do that twice every day and then play. So I think what it will do is the stock will rise and there'll be they'll want more sponsors. Rovers are big on getting local sponsors in. I've already mentioned Sewell's, Hudgell, but they're big on all the locals as well. Companies like SOS Office Supplies, Harrison Solway, who are around Eden Road, who have been supporters for years. They'll finally get the money's worth because they've put in the club for so long, and then again that stock will rise and it is a knock-on effect.
And encourage players to move here.
Yeah, of course, because people want to go.
Yeah.
People over there. If Rovers are knocking the likes of Wigan out and everything like that, of course it takes time. If Rovers win the Challenge Cup, they're not the biggest club in rugby league in England, no doubt about it. They need to do it consistently for 5-10 years to get that mantra and that status. But what it will do is short term, it's quite serious, isn't it? It's people go, yeah, they are serious about what they want to do and they'll want to come over here. And I think with the fan base they've got as well, and what they want to build around the stadium and what they want to make it, it's really exciting. And I'm hoping that long-term plan equals long-term success, and that recruitment's a massive part of it, which I think will help if they win the Challenge Cup. But reaching a major final's no mean feat as well, but I know they want to go one better than what they did 8 years ago.
Well, so obviously Maeve and I have a got a clue about rugby. In fact, I think we're experts now.
I can tell, yeah.
How would you advise us to get involved in rugby in Hull? And then I suppose what do you think Hull KR offers to a supporter? What I don't know how to phrase the question.
Yeah, really, no. So what they're doing now is if you have a look at Craven Park, one of the stands was desolate for years, didn't fill it. It was just the stand facing the docks. Now they've got a thing called Craven Street, so it opens 2.5 hours before kick-off. They have bands, bars, music, merchandise being sold, stuff for the kids. They're making it inclusive so people can go. Again, being selfish, people are spending money in-house now and not going to the pubs down Oldness Road or anything like that. People want to go to Craven Park early. They've had Reverend and the Makers played there the other week before the derby, if you remember them bands. They are, they've had concerts like The Who was there, Rod Stewart the other week. Yeah. Last week.
Massive.
2 weeks ago, Rod Stewart was there.
For Hull KR?
No, he played at Craven Park.
Oh, I see.
So Rovers what Rovers are trying to do to get the fans, they don't just want it to be a rugby stadium. Yeah. They want it to be like a fan
get
zone.
Get the stadium well known so that people know it and come and like, Hull KR.
Where's the stadium?
So, do you know Preston Road? You know Preston.
I know Preston Road.
So as if you're on Headham Road going to Headon.
Yeah.
And
this one.
Yeah. And if you was going towards like Headon way.
We were down it the other day. Because I said, this is Preston Road.
Yeah, I know where that is because you got the prison. Not that I've been into the prison. I know where the prison is.
After a Saturday night. Yeah, so if you're heading into Headon way from the prison, you just keep going. There's a big roundabout where the petrol station is. Yeah. You just turn left down there, over Marfleet Hill, and it's on the right. It's down Poorhouse Lane.
Is there like a cycle lane going past it?
Yeah. There's the track goes into it.
I know what this is.
You'll see it on the side. I mean, it's a big tin sign with a Rovers badge on and stuff like that. But yeah, no, honestly, again, I know I'm biased and stuff, but to get into it, if you go just on a Friday night, it's a good laugh. You can have a few beers and everything. The atmosphere is great if you get the good team, if you get a good performance as well. It is unmatched, and they have that Craven Street now. That they've got exciting plans. They're a team on the up. They've got a building through their academy, massive in the community. You know, every week they send plays to primary schools, to the hospices, and people go sit with the old people, the players, and watch old videos of games and stuff like that. They're a really inclusive club, and I think it is. I know it's a bit cringy to say, but the motto is the pride of East Hull, and they are, because they haven't got much. People put the burners into it. People spend everything they've got to go watch this club, and I think that's what Maeve said. What it'll do, it'll just give back, and again, it'll give people a bit of an identity and actually have something to shout about, because they'll shout about the club until the cows come home, even if they was in the third division. So if you can say you're a Challenge Cup winner, I think it'll do great things. But honestly, if you get to a Rovers game back end of the season, there's great on a Friday night.
Is it just Fridays?
So they predominantly play Fridays. The odd game they play on a Sunday at 3:00, but mainly the home games are at 8:00 on a Friday.
All right. You know what surprised me about this is when I was a kid, and to be honest, up until about an hour ago, I always said, rugby, wrong flitting shape ball. But now I see a lot of similarities between football and rugby. The passion that you exhibit for rugby is exactly the same passion I exhibit for football. Yeah, it is. And I think if you went, obviously you wouldn't have that feeling, go on to go score a try or anything like that. But I think you do get engulfed in it. Yeah. And from a weight point of view, that semi-final, I just wanted to jump up and run in the stand with my friends that I've gone with for years. That's the tough point of my job, especially being a Rovers fan. When next week when we go to Wembley, I'm privileged to go and work at Wembley. I'm not disgrudging that, but when I see my friends and my family, and I'm like, I just want a pint.
That's the hardest part. But on the flip side, for you guys who are getting into it, again, I'm not just doing it to make a dig at Hull, but there's compared for pre-match stuff and for people to get involved who don't know much about rugby. Rovers is probably the place to go at the moment. Yeah. And if you get the weather, it's perfect. It's a great evening. Light nights and that atmosphere's good. Have a few beers. It's a good place to be. And I think the thing is with Rovers as well, if you go in, you'll always be welcome. It's not a case of outsiders are out, although maybe don't speak and call them Kingston Rovers, but just say come on Rovers and say, but we don't like Widnes or all like that. So try and get in with the crowd. But no, it's a really good place, place, and like I said, hopefully they get a bit of success, because it's been a bit of a sleeping giant now, and I think it'll wake it up, and I think it'll wake the city up as well, because ultimately for the city, if it's Hull City, Hull FC, Hull KR, from a neutral's point of view, and for people who are just sporadic fans and like to see them do well, it's massive. Doesn't happen long. FC were back at Wembley in 2017, so were City. Apart from Hull City reaching the FA Cup final, they haven't won anything really, ever. Hull FC have won the Challenge Cup a few times in the last 10 years, but First Division a long time, and same as Rovers. Mm-hmm. So for such a big city, and they're playing towns in the northwest, you do get quite selfish, and you get like, fed up of them winning stuff. It's time for this part to do it, and hopefully Rovers can be the catalyst of that. Hopefully for the teams in Hull as well. Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking another question, Maeve.
Yeah. Okay. Go for it.
This is not Hull KR related strictly. Yeah. But why isn't Hull as a city successful in sporting terms? Because Liverpool, I think, punches well above its weight. Because I know Everton are what they were, and long may it continue. But Liverpool Football Club have been so successful with limited means. Why can't Hull replicate that? Because I see a lot of similarities between the two cities.
As in Hull City, or as in Hull FC, Rovers and City?
All three.
I don't know. Again, a lot of it comes down to participation at youth level. Rugby league's not a major sport anymore, so the levels drop. Again, if you've kind of picking from a small bubble, because it's so hard for Rovers because there's no money in it, you can't, like Liverpool will be able to bring over a 16-year-old from Barca or from Hull. He's not going to want to stay at Hull City or something like that. So from the grassroots level, it's got to be better, and they are trying to make that. But I don't know, I think it's so hard, especially in rugby league as well. Successful's so different, because you don't have loads of trophies. You literally have the Super League, which is like the Premier League, and then the Challenge Cup, which is the FA Cup.
Analogy, I would have been lost.
Literally, so that's what it is. You're fighting for 2 trophies. You get a trophy for finishing top of the Super League before it goes into a playoff system, but no one's really fussed about that, because it doesn't mean anything. You just get a little shield. Whereas in the olden days, you used to have the Yorkshire Cup, Lancashire Cup, a John Players Cup, it used to be called. So you used to have 6 trophies to go for, whereas now it's just 2, and because there's only 12 teams in that Super League, like 20 in the Prem, 24 in the Championship in football, you've got a small pool. But successful as, I don't know, maybe just a bit of poor planning, poor times, bad management, the area sometimes. It is a long way, you're an hour away, isn't it, from Leeds and places like that. So even look at Leeds United, they've got Harrogate, York, Wetherby, all them areas to pick the pull from, whereas Hull, if you haven't got a lad from Hull who's doing well, you're looking elsewhere, and kids don't want to travel on 2 nights a week to come over because they're not going to, are they? They won't go anywhere for an hour and a half. If they've got them areas, them teams in their local area, why would they? So I think that's a massive issue as well. And then maybe just being a bit rubbish sometimes, being honest. Try and picture it up and big them up and go, no, it's not their fault, but yeah, maybe it is.
Staying on Hull, the city people, just to finish, we've got 2 questions that we ask all of our guests.
Yeah.
You want to go first, don't you? On the first question.
Yeah. How would you describe a Hollensian to somebody who isn't from Hull?
Oh, proud. Definitely proud. I'm proud to be from Hull. I know it takes a bit of stick and that, but I think until you come here, people slag this place off without coming. That's what annoys me. People
gets my ghost.
Yeah, people will say, all this and that, and then you turn up and you think, why? Well, if you actually come and experience it, and like you two have and stuff, which I love, that's why I started listening to yours, because it was so nice to hear not a oh no voice or something like that saying how good Hull is. It's nice to hear 2 people from the northwest say how good it is, and yeah, definitely proud. I think quite caring as well. I think people, if you come here and you settle here, it don't matter where you're from, people recognise you as your own, and I do. I think it's great. It's a strong place. It's an hard working place. You look at the dockers, the fishermen, what it's been through over the time. It's copped a lot of rubbish. Even from, you go back to the 40s, going really off track. But in the war, I think it was the 2nd worst place bombed
outside of London.
Outside of London, wasn't it? And so it's a place that's on the up, and you go back 15, 20 years ago from me growing up to what it is now, so everywhere, and it's benefit for me at my age when like the air in town and Humber Street and everything like that. I think it's a great place. It's a great place to live in summer, winter, wherever it is. But I think to sum it up, the people are just proud people, and if you adopt it as your own and you give into the community, you'll get a lot out of it, because there's so much going on. You don't realise how much there is going on. Even I'll check sometimes and I'm like, there's something going on at Zebedee's Yard or something like that, and some great artists, bigger bands are coming over here. The city culture helps a lot. But it's a town, it's a city on the up, and I think for people who don't think it is, come and witness it first before you start saying stuff, because I think you've got to come into it before you can actually judge it. You don't judge it, do you, without reading the cover.
Piers Morgan, we're talking to you, because he came out and slagged it off.
He'd slag anything off, wouldn't he? Anything.
And also, so what does Hull mean to you?
Yeah, a lot, so much. Again, it's a lot of it's to do with Rovers, and that's why you invest, don't you? Because when you go support a club, you're supporting your city as well, and you want people to be jealous of your city and be jealous of that. But yeah, Hull means so much to me. I mean, like I said, I lived in Australia for a bit. Every morning I woke up and I was on my own, so I got a bit homesick. But people go out of Hull and think, I'm going to make a name for myself, I'm going to do this. But you always come back. You always do find your way back home, as cringy as it is. And it does. It means everything. It's where my family is. It's where I met my wife. Eventually maybe start a family and that. So it is. I won't change it for the world. I think everyone says that, don't they, from where they're from. But I do feel quite privileged to be part of this place. And I think it is only getting better. And long may that continue. But yeah, it means a lot. I think wherever you're from, you always wear it, don't you, as a sleeve, or where you go. If you go on holiday, you're like, oh, you're from Hull. No, it's not. It's brilliant. Where I'm from Leeds, and then that starts doing it. But yeah, I think in northern towns and cities we're all very territorial, aren't we? And we all wear our heart on our sleeve. But I think in Hull as well, there is that sense of belonging, and it's funny with the two rivalry and the rugby teams. But I think ultimately, when you come together, it's a very, very proud, vibrant city, and people don't think it is.
I'm going to interject here before we end it. When you're abroad, can you spot someone from Hull a mile off?
Yeah, because I've probably got a Rovers or FC or City tattoo on the back. If they ask for something at the bar or something, then my dad's ears will prick up and like his whole meter will go, someone's over there. But yeah, you always do. You know what? You can go anywhere in the world and there's somebody from Hull. Yeah. It's weird. It's that accent. It's that accent.
I was in London for a bit and I met so many Hollensians. I was like, what's going on here? I was meant to have left Hull for a couple of months and it's followed me, but
so you can't get away from it. But no, always when you can go anywhere in the world and there's always somebody from Hull.
Well, that's very nice to hear.
Well, thanks for coming on, Joe.
No, anytime.
Thank you.
Enjoyed
Thank you very much.
Anytime, guys.